Liminally luminant luminauts. This ain't going to be no run-of-the-mill business pitch into the dark this time, so buckle up after you pour a slake, a side-set snack, or what have you. For once again, this is a hardball dunk douse of a witch to flit tallows to your wickedry. Some many years ago now, perhaps while relatively busy tending house and home during my first and primarily only successful marriage so far, I had an idea for a book or set of novels due to my love of the children involved. I'll have you see now, after you soak this message, that I cared to provide the best I could for them and continue to care. The beginning of the creation of this spark of genius roots from stem back into a very strong childhood trauma I endured regarding the death of in the family. I will hereby share with you to broach the current of what has since flowed from that source through yours truly. When I was a youngster in the mud, our broken family had at one time a dog named Brindle. He was a black pit bull with orange tiger stripes through and through, or vice versa, as the phenomenon was somewhat even. This dog's nickname was Pumpkinhead due to his ridiculously large cranial mass, because he would run off of suburb to rural anytime we let him loose from leash for too long. He was often chained next to the woodshed, where he would literally chew on chunks of split firewood. That's how big his head and jowls were. Save, he was the happiest, fun-loving, good pup of a dog you could ever have as family and friend. So happy his tail wagged so fast that when he'd catch you with it just below the knees like a repeating rifle, or one of those first bang balloons on those foot-long rubber band loops kids used to bounce to and from their grip of band in fist. It was painful. His tail wagging was truly painful. And let me tell you, his farts were so bad, they'd rival the unhatched duck egg I broke in the wild that the neighbors from miles away called to ask my parental units if they'd smelled that bad smell. And though it pains my own Yolka noggin to say, I don't think I ever told anyone it was I who found out what light green putrefaction was inside the shell of that egg. Anyways, so yeah, that's how strong Brindle's farts smelled, though perhaps not quite. Save, you get the idea. Anyways, one summer, he ran off and got shot on a neighbor's property. Some hunter the neighbor had allowed on his land thought he would scare away the deer he was after. Or he was just scared of Brindle himself, which I find kind of unlikely because Brindle was just the most loving dog. Anyways, we were told when we called around after a couple days of him being missing what the hunter had said he'd done in the backwoods of the neighbor's land, and we went out looking for his body. We searched far and wide through the overgrown logging roads back up in there for well over an hour, and finally gave up and headed back to the car. While we were walking back, I got a very personal feeling some out there may recognize as when a thrill runs up your spine from the base of the coccyx up, and your entire aura sort of flares. You turn as if guided by an unseen force that sort of makes you seem as if zombified or sleepwalking or something like that. And all your hair seems to grow a bit all at once, sort of standing on goosebump ends, or however you know that feeling. This feeling guided me to the side of the road and there slid down the bank towards the gully running through the valley of Hillbuckle some 15 or so feet along. He was Brindle. I alerted my parental units in a dull daze, and we all proceeded to carry him back to the car. When we hefted his stiffened rigor mortis riddled body into the back trunk, a splurge of watery blood surged out of the bullet hole in his barrel of a chest. And I just couldn't take it. I burst into tears, trying to breathe through the emotional storm, nearly hyperventilating, as I hadn't yet learned better transmutations. The family we had at the time comforted me, and we moved on driving him home, where my eldest younger brother and I had dug up an underground fort. You may know, the kind where you cover the dugout with a crisscross of sticks, fallen boughs of branches, and then ripped up fresh grass to cover over that, so it's camouflaged to look as if it's not even there in the field. Then you hang out in the cooled, earthy, musty-smelling shade of it, while the sun slips through in minute streamlets of light, illuminating all the earthworms beginning to surface that you're all of the sudden hanging out with, and your fun dwindles to be forgotten. So again, anyways, this pit was still there some 3 or 4 years later, and that's where we buried Brindle. So this brings us back to the root essence of the novels I may someday write, or just share here now, as somebody out there may care to live out this secret experiment or hypotheses that the stories would actually be based around. So this is sort of a gift to the mind of the listener who's stuck around thus far, to consider unwrapping or sharing for others to do so somewhere out there on this beautiful, sparkly planet in this vast, altogether unknown. My step-parent at the time had brought home a red oak tree that we planted over his body some 4 or so feet below. Last I revisited the area, that tree is so huge for the years it's been growing. Must be at least 3 feet in diameter at the base, at least. Going to share something a bit more out there with you now. Some of you out there may have already known I'd experienced, so I'll try to make this part short. And then the things up a couple different ways to not shoe to lace for moccasin foot. When that tree was perhaps half as old or younger, I was half a state away, about to be attacked by a ravenously menacing dog that was literally shaking the gravel under its haunches as it reared back to gain poise to pounce. For with gnashing teeth to tear out my loins, as my legs were apart dangling off the back of a truck bed, I felt so weak and helplessly out of my element. My mind thought out of desperation. If Brindle were here, and before I could even finish the thought, right then and there, he appeared, snarling out of the sticks and twigs of the night, leaping across my vision, tearing over the back of the dog's neck, crosswise as to who was facing me. Blood flew into the air as he tore at the other dog, his body spinning, caterwauling during the ripping latch to let go, landing on his paws on the other side of the pitched yelp of my would-be attacker, to bound off into the pitch dark in the direction from whence he hadn't entered scenery. And he was gone. That dog slunk away to find its owner. I asked around the deserted cement slab next to the river where once stood a restaurant logging companies used to frequent, and no one else had brought any other dog with them. So that alone was weirdly telling. That makes what I'm about to finish in share of this tie-in to the final message I'm gifting here for check of horse's mouth a little less strange. When I got back to my current home city, I was doing laundry at a $quarter laundromat, you know, where you feed them multiple quarters, and anyway, and picked up an Awake magazine out of curiosity and nothing better to read. The article I read spoke of a girl who'd picked up a hitchhiker who pulled a knife on her. Her dog attacked him from the passenger seat up front from the back seats. She pulled over, he jumped out, and she sped away in her car, looking in the rearview mirror while simultaneously remembering the fact that her dog had passed away over 2 years prior. This reading solidified what I'd experienced. For me, to this date, there is no question. Believe whatever works for you about it. Won't change my inner knowing. Brindle has been with me since then, and he enjoys special missions should worthiness present itself. Okay. Woo! And now for the final closure of this seemingly elongated winding of a reading. The novels were going to be about a group of people, a small community that had decided to run a mutual experiment amongst themselves to creating a modern culture of living dryads. If you know what a dryad is, I don't know. You can find out by looking it up. Yeah. For each generation of child born, a tree would be planted over the child's buried placenta, and they would live out their lives spiritually tied to their respective trees. This is the surmise of recreating a modernized semblance of what may have bring back the myths to legend for the glyphs of druid and or dryad cryptids, resurfacing for our world history to explore and possibly enjoy. There were many to match in plot twists and turns this community would be prone to endure in interactive dramatizations of their partnerships and relationships with the world outside their secreted culture that the novels would persevere the writer in painstaking authorship that may someday surface given to applaudable accolades or whatever. We shall see. Be sure to lose a smidgen of ectoplasm on your way out of this paranormal roadside assistance. With a thumbs up, hitchhiker, or you can pack your bags for traveling in wonders one may other than have me along to see or care for. Au revoir and Akashawa.